Morning, everybody. Welcome to LOCPOD Season 11, Episode 3.
Good morning.
We're coming live from the Powering Indiana Lake County Studios.
Look at that sign.
As indicated by this bright sign next to my
Lovely.
left shoulder. Powering Indiana Lake County Studios. Thank you.
I think, John, if you
For
can get like
buying
a...
us.
Yes, absolutely. John, can you get like the coldest blue that's possible on that sign?
It should. That's a good...
Just to
That might be it.
remind us all.
We'll do like the
that looks
temperature.
chilly.
That is chilly, and it is freaking cold out, man.
3 days of it, though. That's the hard part. It's like, you just think like,
not gonna
okay,
get
it's
better.
over.
We got one more day. So last time we were on the show, we were talking about the big winter storm that just hit.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like the winter storm. We hit the snow part. That was the last time we were on the air.
And then it came rain. It really wasn't bad Friday. It was like rain, 35.
shitty.
But all the snow went away.
Yeah, and then it just got cold,
Yeah,
man.
real
I mean,
cold.
as cold as it gets here. I mean, in the Chicago area, it was minus 10, as we'll talk about in a segment coming up. MLK's birthday.
Like 30 below wind chill.
MLK's birthday.
It's pleasant when you're walking
The
around.
whole coldest day of the year.
Yeah.
Wish you were born in July.
Is it his birthday or it's just a day to commemorate? Because
I think it's his birthday, isn't it?
No, because it's the second Monday in January every year.
Agree, but I think they just agreed that they're going to do it right around his birthday.
Sure.
And it's going to be
Right
a 3-day
around.
weekend. And it's always going to be.
15th.
Thank you.
January 15th is his birthday, John?
Yeah.
So this year it actually came on his birthday.
Yeah. And I've done unofficial studies that says that January 15th is always the coldest day of the year.
It was this year.
He's
We'll
done
talk-
scientific research
I'm a part-time scientist. I
based
didn't know.
on observation.
Part-time scientist.
Tom, if this like mayor thing doesn't work out for you, you are quite a historian, man.
Yeah. I'm thinking,
I mean, holy shit.
I'm thinking like TV meteorologist, something like that. Dude, they're fucking wrong all the time, too. You could just go on there and spout some bullshit and go golf.
Hey,
Like,
man.
it's going to rain later. And it freaking was sunny all day, and then you come back next day. It's gonna be beautiful today. It doesn't matter. There's no like batting average. They should have a batting average, right?
That is a good call.
Thank you.
Meteorologist
I just came
batting
up with
averages.
This. I just
Yeah,
came up with this. This
disagree.
isn't in the
That's
notes.
why you're the locomotive.
That's right. And if you get a bad batting average, you get fired. Unless you're Cheryl Scott smoking hot, then it doesn't matter what your average is.
I was thinking about that yesterday. You know what, though? She's moved around a lot. Like, she's on ABC
What does that
now.
mean?
I mean,
She's
no, it
been
just
on
seems
ABC.
like,
That's a
well,
national
like,
position,
I guess what I mean, no, it's not national.
No.
She's only been local.
ABC7. She's been on it for years.
No.
Yes.
She started out with NBC.
I don't even know. I started watching her when she was on ABC.
No.
She's been on for 10
If
years.
you look at Cheryl Scott, I bet she's been on 3 different stations already. 2 at least. I'm just
I
saying.
imagine it's not like when
Some
you're in
guys-
the TV industry, you hang out on one channel your whole
That's
career.
not true. The guy on like NBC, Channel 5 has been there for
the guy
like
on
40 years.
WGN, he's been there.
Yeah, Tom
for-
Skilling's been there for
Tom
like 60 years.
Al
Eye
Roker.
candy.
Al Roker,
See,
NBC
like all this
forever.
eye candy.
I think
Eye candy
you are
doesn't move.
greatly underestimating
Tom Skilling is a
okay?
hottie.
He's a handsome man.
That's what I'm saying.
Skillet head.
They're not going to
And he's
move
gonna
him.
stay right where he is.
Cheryl Scott,
I'm
same
gonna see
thing.
him for
Moves
free
around.
every
Get
day.
out of here. She's been on 7 for
No,
7,
John.
8 years.
Why don't you look that up real quick?
Yeah,
Okay, I'm going to throw out another.
that was not in the notes.
Yeah, this stuff isn't in the notes. Let's just go like a little trivia here, Tom. Birthday of Lyndon B. Johnson. John F. Kennedy.
No,
How
his
the fuck should
death.
I
John
know?
Kennedy's
You
death.
You were so good with the MLK thing.
He's
Well-
not going to
Well, I
be
mean,
a
we
historian.
celebrate a holiday after it. It's like
All right.
I knew it was going to be right around.
There goes
January.
Tom's historian comment.
Yeah, never
How am I
mind.
supposed to know their birthdays?
Imagine having a holiday dedicated to
That was
JFK
hard.
and what kind of crazy shenanigans people would get up to celebrate him.
Yeah.
Wow.
Because he was a party.
What's the day he got
He's a
killed
party
on?
guy.
How about that?
Who?
JFK.
That was in June.
November 23rd,
November
63.
23rd.
Was it
right?
November?
Yeah, because Stephen
All
King
the
wrote a book.
pictures
John?
looked like summer, but it was in Texas. That's why.
It was November, yeah. But
November-
November in Texas.
November
is warm.
23rd, I think, or 20-something in 63.
What's the matter?
No, we're
No,
just
he's
looking
just
at
doing a
pictures of
deep
Cheryl
dive
Scott.
of
You're
Cheryl
reading
Scott.
it, aren't you,
All right.
Kevin?
You're trying.
No, while John's going
5,
through
6.
Cheryl Scott's
Instagram.
lengthy
Yeah.
biography,
Here's
I'd like
the
to point
career.
out that we have upcoming guests. Today we have Hammond School City Superintendent Scott Miller. And, you know, we don't have superintendents of schools on really very often at all. It's going to be an interesting show today because there's a way that we fund government in Indiana. We fund schools. We fund it by referendum. And I think it's a total failure. And, you know, a perfect example is what's happening in Hammond right now. The largest school district in northern Indiana is completely underfunded right now. And I want to talk to Scott Miller about that and his frustrations as the CEO of Hammond Schools. I think that's going to be a good show. And then on Friday, We got Jim Dietlow coming back on.
Wow, Jed in the house.
We're gonna continue where we left off last show.
Where did we leave off?
You like it was weird, dude. You like cut it like you're like, it's 8:30, time to go. Jim was sort of like,
it was probably like an hour and 45 minutes.
It was a long interview,
but
it wasn't an
I had to
hour
go
and
to
45.
court. So
it wasn't, but that was one of those where you're just like,
all right, wrap it up.
Wrap it up, Mayor.
Boys.
It's like, okay. We were like, Jim was like in the middle of answering a question.
Well, yeah, you get Dad and
I
Jim
gotta
in
run
a
sometimes.
room.
What's that?
If you get Dad and Jim in a room, you guys will just like talk.
Yeah.
Talk.
Yeah,
You guys
it was a
could
good
have
show.
kept going.
Yeah.
Kevin's got to keep you herded in. It's like herding cats.
Thank you, Linz.
We
Thank you.
We try to keep the shows to around an hour, so
And
that
it
was
was well
over an
over.
hour, right? But we're gonna have Jim Dietlow on Friday, so we got.
It's going to be good.
We got a
Jim's
good
always
week coming. Good week coming at you.
From the Powering, Indiana, Lake County Studios.
I had an experience the other day.
An experience.
I did.
I don't know if I want to hear about this.
Looking forward to this.
I was shopping undercover. I had all my shit on.
Undercover shopper.
I had my hat on. I was regular.
Dad thinks if he puts on like a fake mustache, he's undercover.
I did not have my fake mustache, but I did have a hat and glasses, and I'm like Joe, regular Joe.
Oh,
right?
so he put on a hat and he's like, there it is, master of disguise.
Yep.
Where were you in this
Home
disguise?
Depot.
Home
in
Depot,
Hammond.
Hammond. All right.
Let's be
Well,
honest. But like people aren't expecting to see me at Home Depot.
true.
I don't exactly strike people as like a handyman. Like you look at me and think, dude, that guy could fix my fridge. You're wrong, right?
100%. Merce is our handyman.
Get out of here.
Funny enough, you say that. I ran into our city controller at Target, and both of us were like, "Whoa, this is weird. We're running into each other at Target."
Yeah,
you know, you just don't see each other.
When I was a teacher and
outside
I'd
of
run
work.
into students at Target, that was weird.
Right, I bet.
That is
Right.
weird.
Yeah,
That's how cops
where's your
always say
mom?
I was
that.
just gonna say that cops
Cops
run
are
into
like,
people
oh,
they arrested.
goddamn, I just arrested you yesterday. And they're at the
Last
Walmart.
week.
That's why cops say they don't like to live in the same city.
Yeah,
I think
might
that's
be good.
legit.
Maybe.
I don't
But, like,
know.
it's like
Also,
me.
the
Criminals
opposite
travel.
of that.
But like with me, I run into people, oh man, I fired you.
Yeah.
Nice
I
to
mean,
see
not
you.
everybody they're
how's
arresting is from Hammond.
How's the job search going?
Right.
It's uncomfortable.
Hey, Dad went to
seems like
Ireland
that.
and ran into people who knew him.
True story.
I've been in Vegas with you, and you've run into people.
Well, nonetheless, I started off my little excursion, and then we went off onto
How popular you are.
Well, let's continue.
No, how popular our show is.
So Dad was
this is
supposedly
good.
This is a a kudos to all of us.
All right, I like
So
it.
like I'm in there and I see a lady that's sort of like looking at me weird, and I'm like busted, right?
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, Mayor Tom? I'm like, yeah. She's like, I am the hugest LOCPOD fan.
No
I listen
way.
to every episode. Yeah.
Oh, that's so nice.
It was really cool because, like, usually if I'm busted in public and people realize who I am, I'm really embarrassed.
Or they have like 50 things to ask you.
Yeah.
Right.
But in this case, I was really embarrassed because, she was loud. She's like, oh, my God, Mayor Tom. And I'm like, oh, busted. And loud, like, everybody's like looking. And then she was so sweet. Her name is Naomi.
Nice.
She works at Home Depot.
Oh.
And I gave her a hug. And I was going to take a picture. I forgot. I just sort of... I went and got a hot dog and hit the road. The Home Depot hot dogs, by the way, are highly
Home
recommended.
Depot has hot dogs.
I've never had them. I
Home
always
Depot
see 'em.
hot dogs are the
They're
best
always at
hot
the end,
dogs
at the
in-
exit.
He's talking like it's a freaking Costco hot dog. Costco is where we get our hot dogs.
I've never had a
I don't get
Costco hot dog or
Home
a
Depot
Home Depot
dogs
hot
are the
dog.
shit.
Never
I'm
had 'em.
starving too because I'm doing
Steam
this.
bun?
I'm doing this the fasting, and my 13 hours
Yes,
is up.
on Zero.
Yeah.
The
So
Zero app.
anyway, yeah. Thank you, Naomi. from
at Home Depot. I'm going to look
Thank you
out
for
for
listening.
her. I
Yeah,
do pop
she's-
in there once in a while.
By the way, Naomi's on chat all the time.
Oh,
she
good.
says.
Where does she work? Like roaming or at one of the desks? Or
She was at the self-checkout, which is where I go.
Wow.
Because I'm antisocial.
I go to self-checkout there as well.
Yeah.
They have a good self-checkout,
Yeah, they do. But they have the guns, which is nice.
which I love.
I know, because I always got
Agree.
heavy shit.
That's so true, though. The guns are so much better than at
Yeah.
self-checkout when you just have the glass.
I went to
It doesn't
Myers.
always get. It
I
doesn't
have
always hit it.
40-pound dog food. I have to freaking carry it up onto the
Instead of the
stupid
gun
scanner.
into your cart.
What the hell, man?
Agree. Totally
Get a
agree
gun.
with that.
Meyer, cheap asses. So
Scanner.
yeah. See,
John, are you a pro self-checkout guy or anti?
I don't. I'm indifferent to it.
John's like,
But I am a
I'm
Home
old
Depot
school.
guy. I'll tell
I'm
you
old
that.
school.
Ring
My
my
wife,
shit
my
up.
wife does
No.
my shopping.
When I go to Home
Ring
Depot,
my
I-
shit up.
What's self-checkout? All right, John, sorry.
it doesn't matter.
John says
No, we
one
wanna
thing,
know.
Kevin and I just go off on him.
Tell us.
I'm just so glad I come here. Tuesdays
Tell
and
us.
Fridays.
Tell us.
Yeah.
About self-checkout.
I was just going to say, when I go to Home Depot, I do self-checkout too. It's
Yeah.
so convenient.
The gun, right?
Yes.
It's the scanner is so much better.
There's always a line. They only have one checkout open there. It's always a line.
With that
at
scanner at Home Depot, I feel like
John.
I could shoot a barcode from across Home Depot.
Totally
It's
agree
like,
with you.
like across the room,
I got
right?
it.
That's
like,
mine right over there.
Whoops! I
Don't
just
be touching
I
at
scanned
it.
that drill on accident. It's an aisle over.
Right.
Yeah, agreed. So Home Depot does have a good self-checkout.
We should probably be more critical of self-checkout, though, right? It's like replacing.
If you're a thief, that's definitely the way to go.
Oh no, it's so
no, I
easy
think-
to like
is
not
it?
scan something.
Really? You
Wow.
sound like you speak from
I was going to
experience.
say, Linz, what is
Klepto.
this? You and Brian, like,
I paid
hey,
for
Brian,
it.
go talk to that lady. I'm going to not scan all this stuff.
I got a PlayStation for the cost of a bubble gum. Like,
Oh, I did. I read in a paper the other day somebody got busted at a self-checkout.
They should be.
But they were doing the 2-for-1. They would go scan, and then they go in the bag, scan,
Oh.
in the bag.
That's not. You're going to get
But
caught doing it. You're going to get caught.
You know what, though? I mean, yeah, he got
Who
caught.
knows?
And he, by the way, he got caught, and they're pressing charges.
They should.
It's in Porter County.
This is a true story. My last visit to Home Depot, this happened. I forgot to scan something. I had a bunch of stuff in my cart. Yeah, no, true.
Yeah.
I had a bunch of stuff in my cart. I'm doing some home projects. I forgot to scan this roll of window screen because it kind of matched the color of something else right next to it in the cart. I left. She didn't notice. I left. I realized walking to the car, I forgot to scan this. I went
keep
back
going.
in.
No.
I went back in, went back to self-checkout, and she looked at me like I was crazy. Like I was like, hey, I forgot to scan this. She was like, what? Like, honesty?
Wow.
I can't believe this.
See, that's crazy, right?
Wait,
you would
they
think
don't
that's
pay
what
her
most
enough to
people should be
care.
doing.
Yeah, you would think.
Absolutely. Good
What's that,
job,
Liz?
John.
they don't pay her enough to care. I wouldn't.
I'm surprised they didn't let out the German Shepherds.
No,
Drop the masking tape.
They let John get out of the doors. Just as soon as he gets out of the doors, they're like, sir,
Oh, how embarrassing that would have been.
you need to come back into the guest waiting room.
It's Naomi.
Yeah, Naomi's like,
Yeah.
hey,
She's
like,
She'd let you
John.
go.
Mayor, I saw John steal some screening material.
Dude, we don't make any money on LOCPOD, so. I mean,
Oh,
we got-
God. Yeah.
Hey, I want to go to a serious note for a second, if you guys don't mind. I want to say something to a friend. Yesterday was somber and surreal. I went to a funeral for one of my friend's kids, and I want to take a moment to talk about, to the LOCPOD audience of dozens, it's time to talk to our kids. It's time to talk to our loved ones, especially if you know any of our kids are taking pills, are shooting up, are doing cocaine, anything like that. They're literally, this fentanyl is everywhere. Kevin and I get regular texts from the Hammond Police Department about people that overdose. It's a weekly occurrence.
Yep.
It's sometimes a daily occurrence when there's a bad batch going around, and 80% of the time we'll revive them, but 20% of the time we don't, and they die. Just like what happened with our friend who's been very upfront, Dave Warple, the mailman, has been very upfront about his son Jimmy's struggle with addiction. And Dave has been basically posting a lot on Facebook to try to, and I believe Dave's purpose is to educate the public about what's going on. And I appreciate that because Dave is grieving, and at the same time he's trying to tell everybody that's paying attention, and there's a lot of people paying attention to his posts because he knows a lot of people, that anybody's kid could die. I mean, it could be anybody. Kevin, do we not see the results that happen in Hammond? It's white, black, it's rich, it's poor, it's
Yeah, and obviously, like you said, Mayor, it's just we're seeing one snapshot, one community in the country. And I think one of the things, and this is probably, I kind of was self-reflecting on this, is that we see it, like you said, all the time, yet, I'm as guilty as the next person for not thinking to myself, that's somebody's daughter, that's somebody's husband, that's somebody's, a brother. And it hit me hard because when we saw Jimmy pass away from it and we heard about that, we got the same notes that we always do, but it was actually somebody we knew.
Yeah.
And that's something that when Dave, I know, in talking with him since Jimmy passed away and also just in his posts, he reminds us, don't hate the addict, hate the drug dealer, hate the, it's addicts aren't bad people. They are addicted and they need help. And I think that's really the message that came through to me more often, because it's so easy to be critical of people. Like, I can't believe they're addicted to drugs. I can't believe that it's a serious disease.
Yeah.
And it hits home, like you said. It goes across socioeconomic lines, and it's something that's a scourge on our society right now, and it needs to be fixed.
Dave said something that struck me. He said that when you see somebody that is addicted to opioids, You know, if it's coke, if it's heroin, if it's pills,
pain pills.
You know, prescription pain pills, whatever. If they are, we should look at them like they have terminal cancer, because that's really what it is. You have a disease, you gave it to yourself. It's a disease that's going to kill you. It may kill you 10 years from now. It may kill you tomorrow. But once you stick that needle in your arm, once you get addicted to these opioids and you need that fix, you know, it's literally like having terminal cancer. And some people live a long time with it and they're successful, and some people don't, you know, and unfortunately in this case, Jimmy was not. And, you know, I look at it like skydiving, right? That's how I think about when you're sticking that needle in your arm. Some people skydive. They do thousands and thousands of successful skydives, and some people, their chute doesn't open on their first one. But like,
and it's kind of like an adrenaline rush for those people, right?
Yeah.
They're like, I like to skydive.
Right.
I'm going.
Yeah, you get that 10,
Rush.
15, 20 seconds, you know, maybe 2 minutes of just total adrenaline rush, and then you're like seeking it, right? I think that's if you're addicted to opioids, if you're doing heroin, if you're doing prescription pain, this is what it's doing to you. And you may die tomorrow. Yeah, and you may live, and you may do it thousands of times and be successful, but it's just as dangerous as skydiving.
I think that's the thing that I think I mentioned it last show, but that's the thing that I think, you know, you have to think about is that you have people that are addicts that know what they're doing could kill them today, and yet they still do it. That just goes to show you how screwed up the brain is on addiction, because you do things that don't make any sense, yet your brain's telling you that it wants you to do it.
Yep.
And that's the sad part. And John, I don't know if you have the link. I put in the notes. We wanted to put this up. It's for addiction help in Indiana. There's a hotline. It's a national hotline number. I'll just say it here, but John's got the link he's going to put up too on the screen. It's 800-662-HELP. So please, anybody that you know that has addiction problems, I also have live chat there on the state website at in.gov. You can search for it. It's a national hotline, and they refer you to state-approved agencies with counselors, and hotline help is available, so please take advantage of it. If you or anybody you know is struggling with addiction, that's 800-662-HELP.
Okay. Well, let's go ahead and do some ads, and when we come back, we're going to talk about MLK March yesterday. We're going to talk about the Iowa caucuses, and then when we come back after that break, we're going to have Scott Miller on. So if you guys don't mind, I'm going to jump in and do the first ad, Powering Indiana. Again, we're coming live from the Powering Indiana Lake County studios. IBEW Local 697 and NECA proudly bring you to Powering Indiana, Lake County. With over a century of experience, they've been safely wiring the region. From powering corporations along the lakefront to lighting up homes across Lake County, Powering Indiana, Lake County is your trusted source for electrical professionals. Join them as they continue to light the way for Northwest Indiana. Visit Powering Indiana, Lake County today at www.poweringindiana.org.
Caucus Law. Are you currently navigating complex legal challenges, unsure of where to turn for guidance? Your search ends here with Caucus Law, your trusted partner for legal solutions in Indiana and Illinois. Whether you're seeking expert representation for real estate transactions, need assistance in forming your business, or have experienced a personal injury at work or in a car crash, Caucus Law is here for you. No matter the nature of your legal issue, our team is ready to help. Call us today at 219-671-6347. That's 219-671-6347 to schedule your free consultation. Hablamos Español.
Rogers Roofing. When you demand nothing but the best for your home and family, trust the industry leader, Rogers Roofing. For over 54 years, they've been transforming homes in Northwest Indiana and Chicagoland. Their commitment to quality shines through in their roofing, siding, gutters, and windows, all backed by the most comprehensive warranties in the business. Visit their website at Rogers Roofing, that's ROGERS roofing.com, or call 219-933-9145 to schedule your free consultation and get on their spring schedule. That's RogersRoofing.com, 219-933-9145. At Rogers Roofing, we expect nothing less than excellence every time.
Misprint Printing. Elevate your brand with Misprint, the premier printing and sign solution in Chicagoland and Northwest Indiana. With a 30-year legacy of excellence, their experienced team, led by Rick Baltensberger, combines innovation and technology to deliver top-quality signs and printing, always on time and within budget. Visit them at misprintusa.com to bring your vision to life today. Misprint, your partner for creating impactful visual solutions.
Lynn's?
Calumet Brewing.
Oh, I didn't realize that you were going to have me continue. Sorry about that. Calumet
okay.
Brewing, it's time to experience Michelob Ultra with only 95 calories, 2.6 carbs, and 4.2 alcohol by volume. The perfect way to start 2024 and keep those resolutions in check. It doesn't matter if you're kicking back after a workout, hitting a pickup game at the park, or heading out to a day out on the slopes. Be sure to enjoy a superior light beer that's only worth it if you enjoy it. Michelob Ultra is brewed to be a complement to your healthy lifestyle. Head over to the Cal Brew or the Michelob Ultra websites and social media pages for details on this great family of beers. Enjoy the Ultra lifestyle with beers and cheers responsibly.
Thanks, Linz.
Sorry about that, guys. I miscounted.
That's all
It's
right.
okay. We know you're there.
I'm still here.
Notorious LMP.
Hey, Jay Vez.
Hey.
How was that? I mean, yesterday, how many MLK marches have you been to now?
I'd say going on 10, probably.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was that the coldest yesterday?
Oh. I could not. I'm not kidding. I couldn't feel my feet.
I thought I got up. I remember
chilly.
MLK March. I posted something in my car one day when the car was warming up, and it was unreasonable, and it said -1 on my dashboard.
And you thought,
And I took a picture
this
of
is
it.
the coldest.
I was like, "This is ridiculous." I'm walking outside, -1 temperature. It's probably -15 wind chill, right? And I was like, "This is insane. Who walks in the morning for MLK March when it's this cold out?" Well, yesterday, took a picture of my dashboard. It said -10. With the wind blowing, it was -30, -40 degrees wind chill.
chilly.
And we did, I don't know, it's probably a solid half a mile, a
Sure.
little over a half a mile walk.
In the dark,
In the dark.
6:30 in the
It's
morning.
6:30 in the
Yeah.
morning. Dark as hell, too, man. It was like dark. It's
dark.
6:30 in the morning. Like, the nights here are dark as heck.
And the cold doesn't help, right? When it's
No,
cold
it's
and
cold
dark.
and dark. It's
Yeah.
just like icy on the ground, and you're walking, man.
I dressed like I was going skiing in
Yeah.
0-degree weather.
You
Yeah.
looked
Yeah.
awesome, Kevin.
I was just like, I'm not going to get cold here. And
I
was
should have brought my ski goggles. That'd have been hilarious.
I almost put them on.
That'd
I
been
almost.
great.
I was like, Tom's going to make fun of me.
What
I
did
wore
you
my
guys
ski goggles.
wear in your feet? Like your shoes? I
That
mean.
was cold.
What did
I
you wear?
had-
Like thicker socks? Because I honestly, my feet just froze, man.
So I was trying to go
my feet
between
were
my
frozen.
wool Bombas or wool Smart Wool. I went wool Smart Wool,
Oh.
and my boots, for whatever reason,
See,
are
you
my
guys
favorite
get to
pair
wear
of
that.
boots.
I'm on stage, so I have to look nice. I have dress shoes on.
Yeah, no, I know.
I
You
was
got to wear a
freezing.
suit, and
Yeah,
that's chilly.
It sucked, man.
Dress pants, that's cold.
So, like, so naturally we do the walk in the morning to honor Dr. King.
Yeah.
Right? And we've been doing the walk in Hammond for 40 years. It's always a sacrifice. It is.
It's a tradition in the region, by the way.
Yeah.
Like Hammond
You
leads
get
the
up-
way on this.
You get up early in the morning. It's freezing cold. It's during a national holiday, so you could sleep in, but you get up and you go to Freedom Plaza, which is MLK Park, and you march to the Civic Center. And then after that, we hold an event. We've been doing it for 40 plus years in Hammond. Yesterday was our day, and I make the joke every year. It's always the coldest day of the year. It is always the
you
coldest
do
day.
say that.
And this year proved once again, MLK Day is always the coldest day of the year. But, another thing that's challenging about MLK Day for me is I have to give a speech about Dr. King.
And you've done it for 20 years.
Well, like, imagine that.
I know. That's what I'm saying.
You, like,
Every year you got to,
Kevin,
mix it up.
I think you know more about Dr. King than most people,
Sure.
just based on your education. Okay. Would you be able to walk out in public and give a speech about Dr. King right now?
No.
Would that be
Be
would
tough.
that be intimidating?
Yeah.
For sure, right?
Yeah.
Lindsay, John, right?
Sure.
Like, most people's biggest fear is public speaking. And then to go out in public to give a speech about somebody as famous and as important and as loved as Dr. King, that's one of the more intimidating speeches I give.
Yeah, and I was just going to say, as a white guy, it's a little intimidating because there's
Thanks for saying that.
cultural
It's the
there's a
truth.
cultural aspect to Dr. King and what he brings to the African American African American community. And
Yeah.
so, I think their experience about Dr. King differs significantly from what I would ever think about or experience about Dr.
And
King.
forgive me if I think that probably my education growing up and learning about Dr. King was a little bit different being a white kid than if I were an African-American kid growing up and celebrating MLK Day and going out and learning things. So, I don't really feel when I took over as mayor 20 years ago, I was prepared to give a speech publicly about Dr. King.
And
I was incredibly intimidated by that speech, and I am never afraid of speeches.
And Tom, we've talked about this, about just how, us growing up in the 70s, American education didn't exactly hit on things that were important to, the African American
Especially-
experience in
Yeah,
America.
no doubt about
right?
it.
I mean,
no doubt about it. I was looking at, even things like they had this thing on the other day. It was like, 1987 dance parties. It was one of those shows we saw back in the day.
Yeah.
And they showed like what the typical kids look like.
Mm-hmm.
And I watched it for like 10 minutes and I was amazed because they looked like kids we went to high school with, right? Not one, like hardly any African Americans or Hispanic kids at all. It was all like white kids. Because that's
perms.
That's how we grew up, though. When we grew up,
Agree.
the media was not diverse at all. They didn't,
Yeah, I agree. Yep, for
so,
sure.
Anyway, why I'm saying this is why I was intimidated to give a speech about Dr. King is one of the things about MLK Day is the march. And this year it seemed like usually it's always going to be cold or raining or snowing. And usually I get a couple people who are like, hey, you're going to cancel the march this year? And I always say no, right? And then this year, let me tell you, with the -10 projected starting temperature and the -30, -40 wind chills, I was literally like getting bombarded with questions about, you're going to cancel this, right? It's insane. Like, why would you walk outside when you can get frostbite in minutes, right? And I said, no, we're doing this damn thing because when I'm doing that march, I want it to hurt. First off, getting up early in the morning on a day off and marching a half a mile in the freezing cold hurts anyway, but I want it to hurt. And the things that we should be thinking about is how lucky we are that at the end of that march, we're not walking into fire hoses being sprayed on us like the marchers in Selma to Montgomery got. Or when we're walking in the Hammond Civic Center, we're not walking into a line of German shepherds prepared to attack us for protesting for our civil rights. So I look at it like that. And that's sort of where I went in my speech yesterday. I think it was one of the more effective speeches I've given because I got to highlight Dr. King. And I also got to talk about why we're never going to cancel that march and why we're never going to, even if it's freezing cold, we're not going to cancel that march.
So a couple of things. Number one, people asked me leading up to Monday whether you would cancel it. And I said, number one, I would never even ask him. Number two, I can guarantee you he's not even thinking about it. So that's consistent, I think, with what you just said.
I don't cancel.
Secondly, right. It's like you there's no reason to. And I think secondly, and you said this, by the way, at Freedom Plaza, and I thought it was great. There was a pretty hearty group, and but even though it was freezing cold and we're all sitting there just like, let's get walking, I think everybody appreciated your remarks of the Ministerial Alliance, and just about that fact is that, when you are walking, you do get a chance to contemplate, and you had a lot, you had some elected officials out there. I saw Congressman Ravan did the walk with the, and so you get a chance to really reflect, and I think that is part of it, part of the walk over there, even if it's 20 degrees out versus 10 below. You do get a chance to kind of sit with your own thoughts as you're walking in the dark, and it's a great event. I think it's awesome. The program was great. The kids choir, all the musical stuff, hundreds of people, a lot of elected officials, and it's a great way to start MLK Day in my opinion. So it was good. So congrats to everybody. Owana Miller and her group. Pastor Sanders was there, one of the first founders of the event. I know was there as well. So that was cool.
Cool
Pictures.
Let's, Kevin, you did a lot of notes on the Iowa caucuses. Could you sort of explain to us what happened yesterday? And I know that Trump walked out with the victory as expected. Yeah. Was there any surprises?
I don't know if surprises, but definitely some takeaways from it, I thought. And, it's always interesting because we're so used to primaries in Indiana. It's always interesting to me to kind of revisit the idea of a caucus and what it is. And Iowa's very unique. And it just is also kind of weird to me, like how much, I don't want to say influence, but people pay attention to Iowa, right? Even though it's a smaller state, it doesn't, it doesn't have a ton of delegates, but it's the first, or diversity, right?
It's a super white state.
Absolutely. And by the way, like, here's just a couple interesting stats. About 110,000 people caucused. That's only 15% of the Republicans registered in Iowa. $124 million was spent in Iowa, which is about $1,100 per caucus goer.
Oh my God.
That's incredible.
So it's insane, right? And it's just it's a snapshot, but they're first, so someone's got to be first, I guess, and they are. But Trump, as predicted, ended up with 51.2% of the caucus goers yes votes. He was the first choice for those folks, and that means 20 delegates for him. DeSantis came in second narrowly with 21.2% with 9 delegates, and then Haley was 19% with 8 delegates, and Ramaswamy was 8. So things that were really interesting, and like I saw this list. It's like 5 takeaways from the caucus. And John, and obviously Tom, I want to hear your opinions on this. 1, Republicans have been saying they're still with Trump. Believe them. I mean, that's right. Largest margin of victory ever at the caucus, 30%.
It's a joke.
And
Gross.
the prior largest margin of victory at an Iowa caucus was 12.8%. So that's interesting.
All that money wasted.
Yeah,
I'm telling you, man.
earliest call ever, 8:31 p.m. So an hour and a half.
Listen, man, I honestly, I feel like democracy is failing.
It's in trouble, I think.
But we have a nation of 300 million people, and the two people that we're going to end up choosing from are two, octogenarians. One of whom is on the cusp of going to prison, and the other one, some would argue, are already showing signs of, failure. So, how is it that we have a country and these two jokers are the only two that we could choose from? It's a freaking disgrace. It really is.
Even more interesting to me is the second takeaway, which is Trump's criminal indictments have only helped him, at least with the GOP base. When you went to caucus goers yesterday, and again, these are overwhelmingly white people in Iowa, 3 in 10 of the Trump base, so those that were extremely for Trump, only 3 in 10 believe Biden won the election. And 2/3 of the Trump caucus goers said if Trump is a convicted felon, he's still fit for president, which I found
That's
to be
good news for
absolutely
felons across
amazing.
the country.
Yes, good news for all
felons
felons
across the country. You too can be president.
Indiana, there was a guy who was actively in jail who got voted into position or into
Maybe
office.
that was more by mistake. This is with full knowledge.
That was in East Chicago, right?
That was East
Nobody-
Chicago.
That was East
Yeah.
Chicago.
Couple
Nobody
years ago.
cares.
He was a murderer.
Yeah, it's fine.
The
I
pre-
don't know. People will vote for whoever they want to, regardless of their background.
Some
at this
people do,
point.
no doubt about it.
They
Yeah.
don't care about your personal opinions. They pick a guy and they stick.
They
with
run
it.
with it, or they don't want to be in a way. I was thinking about maybe some Trump voters. Nobody likes to be proven wrong, so it's like we're sticking with him no matter what, right? So maybe that's part of it.
Mm-hmm.
And interestingly enough, in those numbers I gave you across the country, they're almost flipped on their heads. Is when you look at Democrats and independents. And so if you're against Trump, that may be one saving grace is that the electorate overall doesn't feel the same way that those Iowa extreme Trumpers feel. So this is interesting. We talked about this on Tuesday. DeSantis will interpret his second place finish as a reason to keep on going, but a path to the nomination for him looks closed off. Even if the path to the nomination for him looks closed off, he had 30% in June. He ended up at 21, so he's lost.
But you're assuming that polls are accurate.
No, I'm saying that.
How do you know
sure.
he was 30% in June?
There was
And
a
ended
poll
up
in
at
June,
21.
right?
But polls are bullshit.
Sure. I mean,
Well, it's true, right?
Yeah.
When's the last
I
time
think
you
so.
answered a phone number you didn't recognize?
okay. Well, let me put it this way. Let me ask you this: DeSantis had more momentum last year when he started out than he does
But,
now.
or was he at 21% last
Don't
year
know.
too?
Yeah, we don't
You
know.
know what I'm saying? I mean,
Sure.
we're talking about a poll like it's accurate.
Well, I can say this, and we know this because these are actually results. He ended up losing to Trump by 30. So the question is that something that you should be like, let's stick it out?
The ultimate poll is election day, right? And I think if I was in the Republican nomination, you have to consider the fact that Trump may end up convicted and going to prison.
So in that sense, DeSantis should be happy with a second place finish.
That's
John,
right.
That he.
Yeah. Can we talk this out for just
Yeah.
a second?
Yep.
So when will we know who the nominee is? What month is that?
When Trump gets convicted or not?
No. We'll know before that, right?
Well, you have to get so many delegates. I mean, John, there's always a potential for a floor convention. I mean, that hasn't happened in ages, right? But you have to have the correct number of delegates based on your primary victory.
Okay, let me ask it this way. Let's say Trump's the
victories.
nominee, and then he's convicted. Then what happens? They vote for a new nominee, the Republican National Committee.
Unless they're going to elect him when he's in prison.
Or
But
they're
no.
going to elect him as
I don't think-
That, can't
convicted
happen.
There's
president.
multiple
legally,
states.
Pardon
You-
himself if he was
Yes.
president.
He'd
and
have to
he's
He
win.
in
has to be
jail?
president first, though, Lynn.
That's insane.
But you
It
can't
is
run
insane.
if you're
He's
a felon.
racing. He wants to slow his court cases down so he
Yeah.
can win the election
And
then
pardon
pardon
himself.
Absolutely.
John, I don't believe there is a prohibition for running for president. So what you're thinking is in
my.
Indiana, right? In Indiana,
Yeah.
if you get convicted, you automatically lose your office, and you also cannot run for office.
But there's states.
for state office.
But Kevin, there's states in the union that probably have similar types of laws where Trump couldn't appear on the ballot as president. I imagine he has those.
That's
types
a
of trouble.
great
right. So
question.
Let's say Indiana said you can't run for president. You can't be on the ballot in Indiana if you're a convicted felon. And then Trump is convicted, and Indiana's like, "Hey, we got a problem."
What if
You
he's
can't be
convicted
on the
after the
ballot.
primary, and they already have the delegates?
This is going to be
it's interesting.
insane.
U.S. Supreme Court.
Yep.
Yeah.
U.S. Supreme Court's going to be all over this.
That's
Hey,
interesting.
we better start closing out on this topic because we got our next guest waiting in the green room right now, our new expanded green room.
Yeah, very good.
Did you have more from this?
Just one other thing. I just wanted to mention Nikki Haley. Obviously, this means her New Hampshire is is an end all be all for her. I think pretty much. I mean, I don't know. She's really close to Trump in back and forth. It's like 39-32 in New Hampshire, so that could be a big deal for Nikki Haley, especially if South Carolina's third. I think it is usually, which means, and that's her home state.
Yeah,
so they expect her to win there. So,
but like on the notes underneath Nikki Haley, it says she resonates with moderates and college degree Republicans, which tells me she's dead in the water. Because anybody that's appealing to moderates is a dummy in politics right now, and I'm including myself in that category. I believe I'm a moderate. I appeal to a moderate, and that means I'm dead. That means I'm not going anywhere in politics because why would you appeal to a moderate, you idiot?
The middle of the country, right?
Right?
Yeah.
Why are you going for the middle? You go for the fucking crazy people. That's how you win.
That's how Trump
right?
won.
Like jack somebody off in a theater like Marjorie Taylor Greene, and you'll be a fucking senator,
No,
right?
Bobert, be careful.
Oh, excuse
we
me,
don't want
Bobert.
to. Sorry, Marjorie.
We're gonna get sued again. Sorry, I'm not supposed to be crude before we bring on a guest,
That's
but
right.
like the successful federal politicians are the ones appealing to the wackos. Stop trying to appeal to moderates if you want to be successful, Nikki. You got to go for the whack jobs.
Yeah, it's interesting. She actually won a county, and it was the county where University of Iowa is, which you would consider to be
University towns are usually
that's right.
Democratic leaning.
Mm-hmm.
Props to Vivek, by the way, getting 8%.
8%. No, he wanted double
like him?
digits, John.
He had a lot to say that I really liked.
He is definitely. He's campaigning for vice president. We all agree on that, right?
Yeah, but Trump kind of ripped him earlier this week. So.
He did?
He
Yeah.
rips all of his vice presidents.
That's true.
He wanted to kill Mike Pence.
That's a
remember?
good point.
Yeah.
He encouraged all of his dudes to try and hang him. So
Hang Mike Pence, right?
yeah,
Let's
that
do
was
so-
their big thing.
Right. That's
And
what
just-
he said.
Yes, he
Yeah,
did.
like
I
that
think
wasn't what I
so.
said.
Something-
Symbolically.
Symbolic.
Oh, yes.
Symbolic. Yeah,
there,
the symbolic
there happened to be a
nooses.
the symbolic noose that
Symbolic
happened to be at the.
nooses. Yeah.
Trump
Yeah.
can't
It's all
They have
control
the
symbolic.
symbolic tar and
It's
feather.
all
Control
symbolic. So, all right, let's go ahead and start these ads. We'll get our guest in the studio. When we're coming back, we're going to have Scott Miller here. We're going to do a good interview on Scott. I want to talk about what's going on in the state of Indiana. And this is interesting because it's not just the state of Indiana that public education is under fire. Okay, so no matter who you are out there, hearing from an urban school city superintendent is going to be interesting, so stick around. Prestmer Insurance Agency. For decades, the Ron J. Prestmer Insurance Agency has been your trusted neighbor right on Indianapolis Boulevard, serving all your insurance needs. Their wide range of insurance products and services, including auto, home, business, and life, has helped over 1,000 individuals and businesses throughout the Chicagoland area. Call Ron or Ronnie today at 219-844-0103. They're here to protect what matters most to you.
Tortillas Nuevo Leon. Tortillas Nuevo Leon sets the gold standard in Mexican cuisine across the Midwest. Look for their iconic red and white label at your local grocery store. Indulge in the finest Mexican products crafted with local expertise and savor the taste of authenticity. Discover the flavors of Tortillas Nuevo Leon today.
Tortillas Nuevo León, hechas con amor, para ti y tu familia de todo corazón. Tortillas Nuevo León, hechas con amor, para ti y tu familia de todo corazón.
MCR Partners. Are you seeking expertise in economic development, finance, and planning? Look no further than MCR Partners, your go-to professionals for comprehensive solutions. Their dedicated team is ready to assess your opportunities and ensure the successful completion of your projects. Discover the difference MCR Partners can make in navigating the intricacies of economic development. Stay informed and connected by visiting our website at mcrpartnersllc.com. For personalized assistance, reach out to Matt Reardon at 219-741-9511. That's 219-741-9511.
Byway Brewing. Byway Brewing is a family-friendly microbrewery welcoming you to their spacious taproom and their outdoor patio. Enjoy award-winning craft beer, a chef-driven menu, and craft draft cocktails. Their unique brewing equipment and production facility provides a perfect backdrop for your private events, whether it's a bridal shower, a reunion, or a corporate party. With their new food truck, they can cater to your corporate and private events off-site. Customer service is their top priority at Byway Brewing. Just off of 8094 at the Kennedy Avenue South exit. Discover more at bywaybrewing.beer. Thank you to our sponsors, including Powering Indiana, Lake County.
Our studio sponsor.
That's right.
with this
Hi.
very cold sign.
Hi, Superintendent Miller. Nice to see you.
Good morning, Mayor. Good morning, Kevin.
Good morning, Mr. Superintendent.
Welcome to our studio.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Excited to be here.
Yeah, Kevin's office is nice now, huh?
Yeah,
very nice.
It's new. It's
Yeah.
Doesn't
called
feel
that.
like the Batcave anymore.
No, we
Yeah.
have more room.
This is
a lot of
literally
room.
square foot wise. This is probably almost
We don't have to squeeze past the
50%
corner
larger.
of the table.
yeah. This is a nice studio compared to where we were.
Scott, make sure you're talking to that microphone. It's a little.
Yeah.
You got to
can
get
move
used
it
to that.
around,
Yeah,
too,
you can
yeah.
move it.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
Got it.
Scott and I were walking right next to each other during the freezing cold March yesterday, and we talked a lot of business. Like just trying to I knew Scott was coming on the show, and I just obviously I'm aware of what's going on in School City right now, and Scott's been in charge now for how long?
Almost 5 years.
Has it really?
Yeah.
Man, that's
That's
incredible.
been a long 5 years.
That
It
is
was
incredible.
before COVID, yeah.
And
And just for people who are listening, maybe we're in Indiana. In Indiana, the school city is a separate municipal organization than a city.
it's like Scott is like the mayor of the school district. That's really how I describe it to kids. Is that fair?
Yes.
The executive.
Yep.
And so, instead of having city council members like I do, you have school board trustees.
I have 5 elected at-large school board
At large.
trustees.
Right. I have 9 on my council, but I have them from all districts and at large. But it's a similar type of setup. And, in Indiana, we shifted to referendum funding about how long ago, Scott?
I would say it was around 2008. It was when Governor Daniels came in and really rewrote the Constitution, changed the funding formula from local property taxes funding school to primarily the state funding schools.
Because I remember right before you got elected mayor, Tom, there was a huge debt placed on our property taxes, and that was for the school buildings. That got all the elementary schools in
Right.
Hammond got
Right.
redone.
That was
And-
in the late 90s.
And I remember as a voter, I didn't have a vote in that. I mean, it was fine. I'm glad they did get improved. They're
Right.
awesome.
Right.
But that's like pre-referendum. So that's like
No, yeah,
it
that was in the late 90s, early
Yeah.
2000s. Right, Scott?
That it's true. You just had to make sure through DLGF, the Department of Local Governance and Finance, that you weren't exceeding your debt service rates and
Right.
you could build.
Right.
Can't do that anymore.
You can't do that anymore.
No. The only way to do a major capital project is through referendum.
And I think majors
Right.
defined as what, plus 5 million or something, 5 million or over. Or
Right
maybe
now it's
maybe you're right,
around
Mayor.
6.8 million.
Okay.
Yeah.
You can. There's also a petition and remonstrance process. Like Crown Point utilized that to raise almost about 300 million. Where essentially, if people learn of the project and there's 500 people who petition against it, then it goes to referendum anyway.
So it's
We
kinda
have
like-
that. We have that, right? I remember because we were worried about one of our projects if they were going to petition it and go to referendum. Not
Certain,
that,
certain types of projects.
right,
You're right.
right. There was one project I remember we were concerned with that. That was a while ago. By
That was
the
a
way.
while ago.
But this is like for me to hear how Scott's talking now. Scott, I imagine 85 to 90% of your total revenue goes to personnel. Is that fair?
Yes, that's fair.
I mean, so everybody when they picture
Wow.
government.
I had no idea.
When people picture government, they picture like a mayor, and I have like millions of dollars of contracts that I just like pass out to the cronies, just like handing millions of dollars out. And we have all this fat in our budget, right? That's how we're portrayed to residents, right? When in reality, if you look at our budget in Hammond is a big budget, but it's with gaming and everything, and we're over 120, 500, in that. But literally, 85 to 90% of that is cops and firemen, employees that are cleaning our streets, just like the school city. So when you're cutting government, sure, you get rid of some fluff, but in reality, you're getting rid of people. Is that fair?
That's 100% fair. We were close to 90% personnel in all of our expenditures. And when you cut out a major funding source like a referendum, which for us is worth about $15.9 million a year, you just can't. And then, of course, people's first thing is you need to cut management, right?
Of course, because you have all these high-paid
Because everybody else will run the
$1 million
school city
right?
easily.
Yeah.
Right.
So we've actually done that. We're reduced our administrative footprint by 40%, and that adds up to about 1.8 million.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So like there's all this extra, and like our number, like as far as like contracts and expenses, other than people, our number one expenditure is NIPSCO. Like I can't cut that.
That's
Yeah.
buildings.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's your
I
bill. You
can't
got to
cut
pay your
that.
NIPSCO bill.
Right.
Well, Scott, when you said like when you lose the source of a referendum, but it like so in my mind I'm saying, well, what just live with what you already have. Why can't you just live on what your current budget is?
Sure. It's because this is one of the things that's real tricky with the referendum system, is that once you have it, you're going to use that money for people, right? That's your primary resource in schools, is to provide additional support to people. We have bought some buses with it as well, but primarily we've used it to fund personnel. So if you take that off the table, that's all those jobs that are paid for.
So
in there.
you guys went to the public years ago and were successful and got the referendum passed, and that was for
2017. There was 2 referendums. One built Hammond Central,
Right.
and the other one was the operating referendum.
And so Hammond Central's built, gorgeous, looks like a college. I love it.
Awesome.
Okay, it's one of the best things we've done in Hammond in a long time. The other one that was for personnel, you're saying, so now when we pass a referendum in Hammond, that's not good forever. That's only good for a certain period of
7
time.
years.
So we give you millions of dollars in the 7-year referendum, and you go out naturally and you make deals with teachers and bring in awesome new teachers, and they come in and you give them good pay to be competitive, and then they come in and then the referendum runs out. And you're like, we got to go back out to the voters.
So this
right?
referendum was for renewal of that part?
Yes.
It was straight up renewal, no increase. It was now the increase thing. I do want to say this. The timing was probably poor in that and this is a positive thing for the community, but nearly everybody saw a property tax increase because their home values went up, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's a good thing for
assessed
a community.
value.
It's a great
That's
thing.
not a tax increase. If you sold your house, you would realize those gains.
Sure. But everybody saw an increased AV, and so it appeared as if the school city and the city and every taxing entity was taxing at a higher rate, but it was the same rate. It was just a higher AV.
I think
our houses were worth more. That's a good thing.
our
thing.
rate actually went down, I believe, but our assessments went up, so the bill was higher.
Yeah.
Right. But my job is to add value to your house. So when the
Without a
assessments
doubt.
go up, I'm doing a good job on my end, and you, by the way, because we work together as a team.
If you have good schools, that's always going to help your assessed value.
So we go back to this, though, Kevin. So imagine this. So Scott, 7 years ago, School City, they get the Hammond Central, they build it, great job. They go out, they hire these teachers. Teachers are on for 7 years. And then it's like, hey, too bad you have to go back to the voters. And too bad we're in post-pandemic, recession / and you have to go out there. And the thing is, to me, Scott, I have expensive things I have to do as mayor, like the sanitary district.
Sure.
I have $250 million I have to do to this plant over the next 13, 14 years, or else the federal government's going to have a problem. If I had to go to the voters and say, hey, voters, I have to do a $50 million improvement to the sanitary district. I need your approval for that. And if the voter said no, I'd be like, what are you doing? You can't say no because I have to do this because the federal government's our boss, right? So that's why we don't have a direct democracy running government. That's why you have people like yourself and me making decisions, and if we do a bad job, we lose our job, right?
Yeah.
But this isn't working, is it, Scott? This referendum funding schools?
No, and when you go back to it, and I don't want to be too conspiracy theory, but basically I think there was some recognition by the people in charge that this was going to be a difficulty for, I mentioned this yesterday at the MLK rally, that communities that are under-resourced are going to struggle to do this. And we were the exception in 2017.
Yeah,
we were the exception. Yeah. And,
when you say exception, meaning we were an urban city that actually passed 2 referendums.
Yes. Yeah, we were by far and away the exception. And Brian Smith, the Highland superintendent, did his doctoral research on factors that influence winning referendums.
Interesting.
And number 1 was the socioeconomic level of the city that it's run in.
So are you saying then if you're a Valpo or a Munster, communities that are doing well and are wealthier, they're more likely to pass these referendums and improve their schools than a city like Hammond?
I think there's yes, that is what I'm saying. I think there's 2 factors. Number 1, when the median income of a community is higher, the impact of the taxes on you personally just doesn't matter as much. But number 2, and probably even bigger, is this longer view that investing in education is investing in the entire community.
Because you have probably communities with higher college education. I just did a quick research before you got in the air, and I'm looking at 2023 referendums that passed or failed. You look around the state. Here's what passed: Carmel, pass, and it was a renewal, just like we were trying to do. Hamilton, which is Zionsville,
right,
and all this passed. Monroe, Bloomington, passed. West Lafayette, passed. And then you look at Lake Station, Whiting, Hammond, failed.
Poorer communities that probably need the referendums to pass for their constituents even more than a Carmel. No offense to Carmel. Carmel's a beautiful, lovely, wealthy city with excellent schools. but they're adding, we want a big screen TV on our football field, and we're here in Hammond trying to keep our teachers employed. And we can't pass a referendum in Hammond to keep our teachers employed, and Hamilton County's getting a roof on their football stadium.
And the legislature throws up their hand and say, well, it's just, you got to
a
pass a referendum. You got to
just pass it, right? And then,
Yep.
So what really frustrates me, though, Scott, is like, I think there's one thing I'm an expert on, Kevin and myself both, in Hammond. We know how to win elections in this city.
Sure.
Okay? And when you came to us and asked for your help, for our support, and I jumped on board.
You did.
We knew it was a tough case to make.
Yes.
Right? We knew that we were probably facing an L. I mean, I was hoping it wasn't going to work out that way, but we went out into a tough atmosphere to try to sell 2 referendums, and we were not successful. True?
It's very true. The other referendum for the listeners is we have 2 high schools in Hammond now. One is Morton High School, which was constructed in the 60s, and it has not received any major capital investments since it was built.
Wow.
So we were asking the community, hey, if we're going to have these 2 high schools, we need to invest in Morton High School. And that one also, even in Hessville, in those polling areas, it did not pass.
The other thing I noticed between last time that there was a referendum and this time is they changed the way they word the question.
Oh, they sure did.
Brutal.
And the question is brutal now.
It's brutal.
And it's confusing. And it doesn't.
Yes.
It makes it
It's
sound
confusing.
like your taxes are going up like 50% of your taxes, which wasn't
brutal.
the case.
It's like they made the wording so that it would be harder to pass these referendums.
Agree.
So and now that these referendums aren't passing in places like Hammond, there's complete consequences because that was $15 million in funding that Scott thought we were going to continue to have because I've had it for 7 years. And of course I've committed it to teachers. And of course I've committed it to higher pay. And now that you've taken that from me, taxpayers, which we did in Hammond, there's going to be consequences. Like I read an article. It said busing to end in Hammond. And people were outraged. What the hell? Busing's going to end in Hammond? And I'm like, are you freaking crazy? Of course busing's going to end in Hammond. We voted down $15 million of funding for the schools. Why are we acting shocked? I don't get it. You can't print money. You give the schools money, and if you take the money away, when Scott has to make these horrible decisions, you can't get mad at Scott. You took money. You took $15 million from this guy for our schools.
Yeah, I think it's amazing to me because it's the same thing like, oh my gosh, what did I just do type of thing, right? And so I'm just curious, Scott.
Yeah.
What were the no arguments? Like what? And if you could also give them and then maybe like answer why that's not the case.
Well, I'll tell you the number one thing they never talked about was how this was going to impact our students, our 11,000 kids.
11,000 kids.
That go to Hammond schools every single day. They never talked about how it was going to impact them. The last 6 weeks or so, the election, the focus was on me, right? That I was an awful person.
With your high-priced consultants. And if he would just cut them, all you teachers would make a lot more. It's so ludicrous of the argument.
Yeah. And we really don't have high-priced consultants. We have a couple attorneys that obviously an organization. We're around a $100 million organization.
You need some
have to
lawyers.
have these people.
Yes.
You need consultants. You need lawyers. Absolutely.
But the property tax thing became a big thing. How you spent the money the last time, we tried to do presentations on it, but people, I think, voting can be emotional, right? It's not necessarily based on the facts. Yeah,
Really?
And trying to get the facts out there. There were people such as, and there's landlords in Hammond that don't live in Hammond.
Yep.
And they have in my opinion, a short-sighted view that the primary thing is keeping their rents down, where the long view would be let's increase the value of the properties by having great schools, and you're going to attract a higher quality tenant where you're not dealing with some of the headaches as a landlord that you might now.
I mean, looking a little more cynically, it's probably not even keeping rents down. It's keeping their profits up.
True.
Yeah, sure.
Because they know if they have to tack on, they either have to eat it or they have to tack it on to the rent, and that may make them move somewhere else. It's all about their profit, their bottom line.
The thing that gets me is I noticed during the campaign, even people that had every interest in winning those referendums. There's people on your school board that were against the referendum, Scott. There were. They weren't helping you.
We had a consultant for the referendum, and Robin Winston, you know him.
Yeah, he's great.
And
he knows how to win elections.
His number one thing he said was the board has to be unanimous in the support of it. And right off the bat, when it went to vote, I did not have
Agree.
Unanimous
have
support.
that.
Yeah.
No.
And you're talking about the lifeblood of your organization, and the board they were screwing you on the election. They were undermining the election process and trying to gain popularity for them personally by saying, I'm against this. But like, now that you're cutting, now they're demanding your resignation, which is insane. It's like, like you did everything you were supposed to.
I'd love to see that those people.
And I'm sorry for bringing this up, and I'm not trying to embarrass you. And I know the newspaper keeps like talking about it. It's ridiculous. Like, what did you do wrong, Scott? I don't get it. Like, I'm trying to figure it out. I'm a pretty objective guy.
I'd love to see those people that voted against the referendum in Scott's seat right now, because you'd be doing the same thing. You'd be faced with the same questions and the same tough decisions that Scott's faced with.
He was a teacher for years before he became
14 years I taught in Hammond schools.
We were part of the union?
Yes, all 14
union
years.
Dues paying member?
Yep.
The supporter?
Yeah.
And now you're the big evil superintendent that wants to cut everybody's jobs, right?
That is some of the perception, yes. I will say that is a difficult thing for me to understand fully, is that if the community, and it wasn't close, right? They beat us down 70-30. Like, it was not a close election.
Agree.
And yet, if it's at that rate, you would think those same people, when we're proposing cost-cutting measures, would be like, good. Like, this is what they needed to do. We told them that they were too fat and they need to trim. But the reality is we weren't that fat. And the things that to get up to that amount and to build some cash balance for us, none of them are enjoyable suggestions. And I'm not going to speculate on them, but all the things you would think, reducing salaries and benefits or positions or considering consolidation of schools.
Like
or
closing schools.
all these things.
You have to consider that now.
I hate it. I mean, I don't want any of this. I'm trying to be as equitable as possible in these situations, but I think the cat's out of the bag with this. The day after the election, DUAB contacted us, the Distress Units Appeal Board,
and tell everybody what that means.
Yeah, so for any basically taxing unit, if the state has a agency in Indiana called the Distress Units Appeals Board that will work with municipalities if they feel your finances are not trending in the right direction, if your balances get too low.
And they contacted you the day after?
Day after the election. Wow. Yeah, and we had met with them.
It's like the Grim Reaper.
Yeah, we had met with them in August, and they're like, well, we'll wait and see what happens with the election before we do anything else. And after the election, and so they're working with us. And they're going to ensure that if we locally don't make the right decisions, that the right decisions happen anyway. And again, for those listening outside the area, we're next to Gary. And Gary, I don't know how long it's been, but DUAB had to come in and actually take over that.
It's been 6 or 7 years.
And they just recently went back to an appointed school board locally.
Locally. Yeah, appointed, you're right.
Yeah.
But DUAB also has the ability to take a contract, like a teacher's contract, and say, this contract is null and void.
Crazy, yeah.
It's out.
Right. We can't afford it.
We can't afford it.
Mm-hmm.
If they appointed an emergency manager in Hammond, yes, they would not have to recognize any collective bargaining agreements.
Mm-hmm.
And they went down to one high school in Gary, one public high school in Gary.
They put a bunch of people from Indianapolis in charge of the Gary School District, and they, with no regard to teachers, to history, to tradition, they would just shut down schools.
Yeah,
so now we have that same body that did that in Gary already. And they have one high school in Gary now in a city of 70,000 plus, and now they're contacting our superintendent. Why? Because we didn't pass the referendum. No. Not because of anything Scott did, because we didn't pass a referendum. That's why.
I will say this. My interactions with them is they have been helpful. They want us to handle our business. That they don't want to take over any schools anymore. But that is looming. We have a due date in the middle of February where we have to present our cost containment plan.
I mean, as an educator, not as an administrator, Scott, tell me what you believe or what you fear the impact of this will have on the school city.
Undoubtedly, it will lower the resources and services we offer to kids and families. 100%. That is the impact. So,
and in a community like Hammond, you need those resources, and you need
we have more need than most communities because of our demographics. Yeah. We have more need than a Munster does and a Valpo does, and Munster and Valpo could pass referendums like that
they have.
Because they have a wealthier community that can afford it. But if you're from a poorer community in Indiana, Wait till you see what's going on 20 years from now. 20 years from now, you're just screwed if you live in cities like Hammond or Lake Station or Whiting. Too bad for you. What the answer is to move to a place like Valpo. Instead of having a uniform school district, a uniform public education system that educates the public, they're creating a system of haves and have-nots. And right now in Hammond, it appears that we're in the have-nots because our residents refuse to pass a referendum.
So one other major thing that the state legislature did, and again, you got to question, like, is this a long-term strategic plan or are these just short-term decisions? But there's two parts, not to get too much in the weeds, there's two parts to school funding from the state. There's a foundation amount that is the same for every student in Indiana, whether you're in a poor district or a more wealthy district. That's the same. But then there's this complexity amount, which traditionally in Indiana offset some of the challenges that urban districts and lower resource districts had.
Okay.
In around 2016, what they did was they said, we don't really think that's fair anymore, so we're going to redistribute that complexity money and add it to the foundation. So districts like your Carmel and Zionsville actually saw major increases
More funding
for their funding, where Hammond lost over $10 million a year in the school system because of that. And that was money that was to recognize that there's additional needs in under-resourced communities.
There's a disparate impact between communities.
And that was a state decision that was made. And again, when you look at all these things in a big thing, what is their ultimate goal? I say it's to privatize education. Like, that is their ultimate goal.
I think that's a question you have to ask. Is it to get rid of public education, even though there's a requirement under the Constitution in Indiana
Right.
to provide
But
it?
look what they're doing with the $1 sale of the schools. You have to sell Gavitt High School to a charter for $1. That's obviously to benefit charters because Gavitt High School is worth millions of dollars, not $1. That's a ridiculous. Ugh. Scott, you know what's crazy is, you're the first school superintendent we've had on the show. Okay. And you're a good friend. I appreciate you. I support you. I think you're doing a great job personally for what it's worth. Okay. I voted for both referendums. All right. And I'm sad that they lost. As a mayor, I'm sad because we messed up in Hammond. We really did. Now there's consequences that we're dealing with. But I want you to know that this is not your fault. I want you to know that I know that, and reasonable Hammond residents know that, Scott, that this is not your fault, that you're being unfairly portrayed by people that weren't even pushing the referendum. I know who was out there. Yeah. Like, I know, and the outrage that I see in Hammond right now, I wish that same outrage happened during the referendum. That's when we needed to be fired up and in people's face, not now. It's too late now.
Kevin, you asked what was the other talking point. The other big talking point was we lied because we closed Gavin and Clark, right? Mm-hmm. Like that was the big the big thing. And I was not superintendent when we ran the referendums in 2017, but when I came on board in 2019, the financial situation was dire. And this is probably the most compelling stat for your listeners. In 1969, we had 4 high schools and 25,000 students.
Wow.
And fast forward exactly 50 years later, 2019, same 4 high schools and only 12,000 students.
That's right. It's a no-brainer.
That's right.
I mean, like that.
We all knew it too, Scott. Yeah. I was mayor for 10 years of that. And we all knew we have way too many high schools. And nobody was doing, no offense, but at the time, the administration at the time was not doing what we needed to do as a city.
Scott inherited a really bad situation.
Yeah.
Lindsay was one of your. I was a teacher during that.
But that's what I'm saying, though, Linz, is everybody knew what was going on in Hammond wasn't working. But the decision, even like in something like sports, you couldn't even hardly field a team because there were so few kids.
So the part that I felt was most manipulative in the election was because that hurts a community. When you close schools, it hurts some of the identities. It hurt the Robertsdale area. It hurt the Gavitt community. Mm-hmm. Some of the people who were behind the funding of the anti-referendum campaign, they didn't care about Gavin and Clark. In 2017, they weren't like, we need to support Gavin and Clark. They were against it in 2017. But fast forward to 2023, they're against it, and they realize there's this community pain, so let's tap into that.
Of course, because it goes to what you said before. Voting can be emotional.
Yeah.
Look what they did. They lied to you about Gavin and Clark. What are they going to do next?
Scott,
Right.
Scott didn't lie to anybody.
That's manipulative. Like that really was preying on people's emotions of they closed my high school.
Yep.
And that had to happen. As painful as it was, that had to happen.
Let me ask you a question. One of the things, I know that you're a great executive, and if this were facing me in the city, I'd be trying to make cuts in the first year that you have no choice on, right? But you make these cuts now, and then you go back to the voters, and hopefully the voters get it right. What's the soonest you could possibly do something like that?
The soonest we could go back, I'd have to get 500 signatures, but the soonest we could go back is the presidential election.
Wow. Well,
Oh, wow.
That's
pretty soon.
fall.
in November. Wow.
The board would have to vote on it in June, though, and I just don't know if the community is going to be ready to do that in June. But
Hey,
I'm
man,
ready.
We have a guy running for president with 91 felonies.
Let's go for it.
I will say this, that I can't be the face of it, though. Like, it needs to be community based. It needs to be people coming to the school board saying, hey, like you said, we don't like this direction. We do need to support our schools, and we're going to help lead this charge. If it's Scott Miller round 2, I don't think there's success. So it really has to be community based.
Sign me up.
Yeah, I'm ready.
Okay.
You got 5
As the
votes in
mayor.
my house.
Yep.
Oh.
We got 3
Or
votes
4,
in my
I
house.
guess.
I know and this
I was
one,
about to say I didn't know Kevin's got a ghost voter
No,
in his
4.
house.
4. I forgot one's in Florida. So.
and there are consequences to some of this, and this one I haven't prepped you with this, but I had a family call me and say, we put our house up for sale the day after the election. We don't want to
Wow.
live in a community that doesn't support
Supports
God,
schools.
I was
See that.
depressed like that after the election. Also, personally, I
Yeah.
felt like the city. Like I feel like when you're mayor, the city and you're symbiotic. Symbiotic.
Yeah.
Thank you, Kevin. That's the word I was looking for. And I felt like for the first time in 20 years, when the voters rejected this, that I'm not on the same page as the voter, which is scary for your mayor to say that.
Yeah.
Education in Hammond is so important. School City Hammond is so important. There's 11,000 kids. That's bigger than a lot of cities in Indiana.
That's a good point.
And we're not funding it properly. And the voters said, no, we don't want to fund it properly, actually. It's a sad state of affairs.
How are we going to get young families to move in if there's no quality
That's right.
education?
If you-
That's right, Linz.
We're a community that rejected a referendum that was going to help teachers and help students.
We're a state that allows that to happen, which is embarrassing as it is.
And there's a lot of information, Scott, you said today that I didn't know. So I appreciate you coming on. It's always good to have great guests like you. And it's a good topic. It's an interesting topic, I think, across the state and across the country.
Our live audience doubled when we started talking about
See,
this.
we need to have you on more often. Look
Our
at
live
this. You
audience-
double it.
Yeah.
It was just me and Tom. It was boring.
Yeah,
Nobody
we're
listened.
just
You
gonna
come
put your-
in and
We're just going to put your picture on most shows from now on, if that's all right.
The cardboard cutout in the background.
Yeah, right. That'll work.
well, thanks for coming in, Scott. Tom will wrap it up.
Thanks, Scott.
Great.
I appreciate you, man. I think you're a great superintendent. We're lucky to have you. And I didn't even get half the stuff that I wanted to talk to you about, but it's an excellent topic. It's interesting, and we do have a lot of government-loving people that watch this show and listen to it, and I think that's why the population doubled when we started talking about it.
Anytime you want to have me back on, happy to
Thanks,
do
buddy.
it.
We will.
Yeah.
It's nice to get in depth on something too, isn't it? Because sometimes you can't do this on, when you have commercials and stuff. We could just dig in on LOCPOD, which is really nice. So
It is super nice, and a lot of times your public events too. There's time limits, and you just can't get into it. And so, yes, this is a great forum.
well, thanks for coming on. It's great.
My pleasure.
Welcome to LOCPOD, and only our third show in the new studio. So, Lindsay, great to see you,
Very nice.
babe. Thanks.
Thanks.
For being a great teacher, and she's a tutor for nursing students.
That's nowhere near what I did as a teacher.
Yeah, right. She was a teacher at Morton High School for a long time, and then she taught at Hast. So,
Yep, I've seen both sides of the coin.
yep.
So.
Hast was a partner with the referendum too.
Yes, they were.
Yes,
They
they
were
were.
going to make out
Something
too.
else.
I
Yeah.
saw that in the paper. It was the first time in Indiana that a charter school is going to also benefit from the referendum. And yep. So
Jay
there you go.
Vez, thank you,
Hey.
sir.
Thank you.
So
You're
shows have
welcome.
been sounding great. I've been listening to it on the stream. It's been
Good.
everything's great. I appreciate you, John Vez. K Chandler, thank you, sir.
Yep.
Appreciate you also. And thanks for paying us, charging us a reasonable rent every month.
You're
We
welcome.
Appreciate it. So
Trying to keep the lights on.
thanks for listening to LOCPOD, everybody. We'll be back on Friday with Jim Dietelo as our guest in studio. So another great show on Friday. So make sure to tune us in, follow, like, and all that stuff. So we will see you on Friday, everybody. Thanks for listening to LOCPOD. LOCPOD is out.